I never imagined a clear moment when the phone would fall silent. My name is David. I live in a mid-sized town in Ohio, work in logistics, and I've always believed I was doing the right thing for my family. My son, Ethan, is now 27, living in Chicago and working at a startup. For years he called every Sunday afternoon without fail, sharing a slice of his life, asking about mine, sometimes just saying nothing and letting the comfort of our voices fill the space. Then one Sunday came and went, no call. And then the next and the next. At first I told myself the city's noise, the startup's pressure, his younger friends and their wild weekends, that must be it. But as days piled up, my stomach knotted with something worse. Something had changed. I remember sitting in my living room, the TV playing in the background, the phone resting on the coffee table, a weapon turned inert. I realized the call wasn't just late or delayed, it wasn't coming anymore. And I did what dads do. I asked myself what I did wrong. We were never a perfect family, but I believed we were close enough. I had put in the overtime shifts, made the little league games when I could, coached soccer on Saturday mornings, came home on Friday nights with Chinese takeout and a couple of beers, always tried to smile and ask how his week went. I reminded myself I was showing up. But somewhere along the way I missed the subtext. I missed the ambitions he was quietly nursing, the friends he watched with envy, the dreams he talked about between bites of his burger. I gave advice, often unsolicited, I confess, about finding the real world, about hard work, about paying rent and saving for retirement. I told him stories of my father, of how the world didn't hand you anything. I felt I was doing right by him. But perhaps I was doing right for who I was, not for who he was. When the call stopped, I tried every channel, text, email, the messaging app he first used in college. I left a voicemail. I said, "Hey bud, just checking in." No reply. I told myself to give him space. I said I wouldn't pester. But the silence grew heavy. It wasn't just the silence of a son not calling. It was the silence of a son I knew and didn't know anymore. And I started to ask myself the old questions. Did he feel unheard? Unvalued? Did I push him away with my expectations, my steady-state comfort, my constant dad being dad? Or was he angry at something deeper, a moment I forgot, words I said in frustration, or maybe never said at all? In the sleepless nights I rewound memory after memory. When he was 10, I scolded him for missing his homework so we missed family dinner. When he was 15, I told him you'll understand when you're older after he asked why I had to leave early for work again. When he was 21, he came out of school early and I remarked, "Glad you got it done," without really asking how he felt. None of those moments was dramatic. At the time, they seemed ordinary. But now they haunted me, small stones that together formed a wall. I realized he might not have stopped calling because of one big fight. He stopped gradually, because over the years, I didn't fully hold the space he needed. Because I believed presence was enough, and sometimes it isn't. The statistics say something broader is at play. In the US, studies show about 26% of adult children report a period of estrangement from their fathers, with an average first separation around age 23. Researchers say these rifts don't always stem from dramatic abuse but often from accumulated emotional distance, changing cultural expectations, and mismatched values. For me, the shift was quiet, almost invisible, a favor I didn't ask, a check-in I skipped, a listening ear I didn't deploy. I felt shame, sadness, and regret. I wondered how many other fathers wake up and notice the empty Sunday slot on their calendars and think, maybe I lost him. I began tracking the weeks in my head. Week 1, no call. Week 2, birthday came and went with a text that read, "Happy birthday, Dad," but no voice. Week 3, I drove past his old college town and thought of stopping by unannounced. I didn't. Week 4, we both had Thanksgiving, my family gathered, his unseen. I caught myself holding the phone, wanting to dial Chicago, but closing the lid instead. I told my wife Sarah, "Something's wrong," and she nodded gently. She had noticed the declining check-ins, too. She said nothing had changed overnight on his end. Maybe he was just busy, maybe lost. She asked me if I'd considered that he might feel suffocated by my concern. That cut deeper than I've told anyone. I asked myself, was I being too controlling? Too present in a way that overshadowed his independence? In one of the rare voicemails I left, I said, "I hope you're happy, son. I love you. If you need anything, I'm here." It felt vulnerable and too loud. Later, I wondered if it sounded like a crutch rather than an opening. I wasn't sure how to hold space for him without filling it with my need. The worst part? I still didn't know the real reason. He wasn't blocking me. I wasn't getting "don't call me again." There was simply nothing. In that nothing I heard everything: the distance, the unspoken hurt, maybe his feeling that I didn't see him. One afternoon, I found a letter in his old desk drawer. He had moved out years ago, but I kept the desk. The envelope was addressed to Dad, and dated months before he'd moved. I opened it with a thudding heart and found a note. "Sometimes I feel like I'm invisible in your life. You say you're proud of me but never ask what I feel proud of." My throat closed. I reread those lines until the edges of the paper blurred. I folded it back, placed it in the drawer. I hadn't seen or heard from him in a month after that. And in that moment I realized, he didn't stop calling because of me entirely. He stopped calling because he felt like I stopped seeing him. I decided to go to Chicago. Not to demand contact or to confront him. I wanted to show up. I booked a weekend, drove across the state line, sat in a coffee shop near his office building, watching young professionals hurry by. For 3 hours I waited, phone on silent, coffee cold. I did not call him. I did not text. At one point, I paid my barista, stood up, hesitated, then slipped a note under the sugar dispenser: "Dad's here if you want him. Anytime." I left with tears brimming, but the door was open. I was vulnerable. I was saying, I will show up even if I'm not asked. That weekend I learned 2 things. First, absence can sometimes speak louder than presence. And second, you can't control what someone else feels. You can only show up for what you can control. When I got home, Sarah asked me how it went. I said it felt both hopeful and empty. There were no phone calls on the trip. No message. But I heard something shift inside me. I realized I had to change how I loved him. I couldn't just wait for him to pick up the phone. I had to earn the space to be in his world again. I started listening differently, not "how's work," but "what was the hardest part of your week?" Not "what are you doing?" but "what did you do that made you feel alive?" I adjusted the conversation. I uncoupled my love from expectations. I told him, no agenda. I'm here to learn. And I sent a message: "Son, I'm proud of you just for being you." I didn't expect an answer. I just offered. Weeks passed. A text one Wednesday afternoon: "Hey Dad, thanks for the coffee. I'll be in town next month. Maybe dinner." My heart leapt. It wasn't the grand reconciliation scene in a movie. It was quiet. It was tentative. We met for tacos downtown. I paid the tab. He thanked me for being patient. He didn't say what I expected. He didn't say, "I'm sorry I cut you off." We didn't talk about the missing years. But I heard something in his eyes: acceptance. Perhaps even curiosity. Our call resumed that Sunday night. I asked about his week. He spoke. I listened. I didn't correct, advise, or fix. I just said, "Tell me more." The journey is ongoing. We still stumble, old habits creep in. I still catch myself slipping into "I know best" mode. But I'm aware now. I apologize more. I ask more. I thank more. I accept more. I don't wait for perfection. I just wait for the next call. And when it comes, I answer. Because it matters. If there's one thing I've learned, it's that relationships don't just heal in a moment. They heal in 1,000 small choices. Showing up when you're unseen, listening when you think you already know, loving when you fear the silence. And that's something worth remembering when you next pick up the phone and wonder if someone who used to call still will.